Welcome to HBTV. I'm Harry Binswanger, the HB in HBTV. My special guest today is Fiona Miller, who is the head of quadraScope, a fund for investing in radically revolutionary biological changes to the human lifespan. And I'd like her to explain to our audience why these things are possible and what exactly we're talking about. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you, Harry. I'm really honored to be on your show, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I am the managing partner at quadraScope Venture Fund, and as Harry said, we invest in young companies that are working to radically extend our not only lifespan, but health span, and maybe keep us young indefinitely. And so why is it possible? And maybe I will start with a slide and dive right into that. And let's see. So in today's biotech, big pharma, the medical system, we are all focusing on diseases. So for medical research, we fund research on cancer, Alzheimer's, on all these diseases one at a time. And there are hundreds of them. And so there is this new way of thinking that started happening at the turn of the century. And it's broadly referred to as longevity biotech or long bio. And there's a new group of scientists that are introducing this concept, well, that all of these diseases really are aging, and that we just gave them names. And really the upstream of all these diseases are the hallmarks of aging. And they cause all the diseases to happen. So what are these hallmarks? Today, we have defined 12 of them. There may be others added. But if we take animals like mice and we start tinkering with some of these hallmarks and accentuating them and accelerating them happening, the animals get old. And if we try to address them and treat them and fix them, we can bring animals back to a younger state. So the goal is here with this longevity proactive medicine is let's not wait for the disease to happen. And how do we prevent the disease to happen? Is you have to keep the body in a young biological state. And because we all, there is damage occurring as we age. And that means that we need this continuous rejuvenation process happening proactively, just like we take care of our cars, like we change the oil, we change the batteries. We've got to proactively say, let's stay young, let's stay biologically young. So that's what the science is all about. So what are these?
Isn't there more? I'm already old. I want to get young again.
Well, yes, we have to reverse. That's the whole idea, right? Because even if you continue getting older, you have to then get back and do it again, right? So you're constantly in that loop. Because we don't know how to stop aging. I mean, you can't stop it. There's some program running there. Our repair processes get weaker and our damage is building up. We don't know how to stop that. We may be able to fix it and treat it.
So you think that in the future, a person will get to a certain age and then go in for a treatment, come out younger, and then start aging again, go in for another treatment years later. Yeah. So I've always thought that's fair. It's fair that you get old, but then you should get young again. Like the seasons, it gets cold to winter, and then you have spring. So that appeals to me as someone who wants to get young again. But of course, just that it appeals to me or sounds fair doesn't mean it's physically possible. What reason do you think that it's physically possible?
Well, there's no reason that we know of that it's not possible. Okay, and we have learned a lot about aging. We understand aging fairly well as a scientific body today. We have some convincing data and experiments in the animals now, and we now have some money behind. So I can elaborate on all that a little bit, right?
Yeah, I want to know about the animals getting younger.
It's all still pretty mild, but obviously, mice. So let's start with the first low-hanging fruit. How do we get them younger? And the first hallmark is cellular senescence, right? This is the first one we can attack, and we have shown about 10 years ago. Scientists, Judy Campisi is one of them. She started Unity Biotech, and in the Mayo Clinic scientists. They have run experiments on mice where they're senescent cells. They're the suspect in aging. They're a strong factor in aging. So what are senescent cells? So all of our cells divide, and they have a limited number of divisions, and then they're supposed to die. But they don't all die, and some of them stick around and become senescent. And these senescent cells are, they're actively toxic to the body. They produce a substance called SASP, senescence-associated secretory phenotype. And as they build up, as we age, there are more and more of them, and more of that SASP floating in our blood and creating more senescent cells and actually causing damage. And so these scientists have basically taken mice and induced senescent cells in them and then fixed them. And that happened about 10 years ago, and observed some widespread positive effects of removing these senescent cells.
What
and
was
so,
that positive effect?
Pardon?
What was the positive effect? Could you see it in the mice?
Yeah, I think there was physically, more muscles, less gray hair in the mice, better memory, all kinds. They have a battery of standard tests that they do for rejuvenation, like grip strength. They hang the mice down to see how long they stay and how well they remember where the food, stuff like that. There's a battery of standard tests, but also the physical appearance too.
Sorry?
The physical appearance. There are some photographs of these mice. I didn't bring them here, but it's impressive. And so what followed is extensive investment into senolytics, which are drugs to kill senescent cells. We're still learning a lot about them, and there are no drugs approved for humans yet, but people are taking stuff like dasatinib and quercetin and various other. So they're kind of like cancer. Senolytics are blunt instruments, and they will kill other cells along with senescent cells.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so there are some innovations, and one of our investments, a company called Deciduous Therapeutics, has a way of selectively killing the ones that produce this SASP, this toxic substance, by training natural killer immune cells that are nature. It's the way nature kills senescent cells. So there's still a lot to understand, and there are different senescent cells in different tissues in the bone, and there is some work ongoing to create an atlas of senescent cells and qualify them and establish some common ways to measure senescent fluid in the body.
Now, there's some big money going into this general field of research, right?
Yes.
Companies that we're familiar with. Can you name a few?
Well, Unity Biotech is one. It's a public company, and
the investors.
Oh, investors. Yes, there are. In fact, that's a good point. So it's mostly high-tech money. So I have a slide. I will show you who they are. But this whole subset of biotech is propelled by this Silicon Valley current and spirit and this whole entrepreneurial approach. It's not just the money, but a lot of high-tech people, myself included, jump into it and run companies and start funds and learn about this stuff because we all want to stay around, and we don't want to lose our marbles as time goes on. But yeah, so the investments. So here's something. Yeah. So thank you to our scientific director, Dr. Jose Navarro, who assembled actually most of the data I'm showing here, and he's probably on the call. So he assembled. He has a spreadsheet, and he's made all these slides clickable. So if anybody wants the slides, there's a lot of interesting information here. So all the points on the plus, these are specific investments for the last couple of years. So even though there is next to zero public money going into longevity biotech, there's actually a fair amount of venture money. And you can see it's a still nascent, tiny industry, but it got 18% of all venture money that went to biotech in 2021. Wow. Now we see some notable investors. So Altos Labs got $3 billion from Jeff Bezos, Yuri Milner, and a couple of venture funds. And their mission, they basically gathered all the top minds in the industry to work on cellular reprogramming. So they are able to show cells getting 30 years younger in a dish right now. They can do it in mice. And we're still, there's more than just cells. There are these 12 hallmarks of aging, and we cannot just fix one of them and get younger. We have to fix at least a few of them. But once we start fixing some of them, they will help the others. And we don't really know. We're in uncharted waters here. But anyway, this
Jeff Bezos is the head of Amazon, or founder, right?
Yeah. He's still
and
running.
Isn't Google in it?
Okay, so Google is not in this, but Google is in Calico. So Google funded Calico back in 2014, I want to say, or 13. They were the first longevity company. They've been stealth. We don't know what the heck they're doing, but this year they got another $1 billion, half of it from Google again, and half from a big pharma, actually. I forget which one, AbbVie maybe.
I'm just trying to draw you out to establish the credibility, because there's a lot of people out there who think, no, aging is inevitable. It's built into nature and everything wears out, and this can't be a real thing. But at least so far, we've got some big names who think are willing to put billions in because they think it's going to help them.
Well, we know it's not inevitable because we can prolong it in worms and fruit flies and even humans. We know a lot we can do. I mean, it's inevitable if we do nothing, right?
But it's inevitable what?
If it's inevitable if we do nothing about it.
Oh, we do nothing, yeah. But there are organisms, right, that live indefinitely and don't age, right? Like there's one of the sharks.
Yeah, there is a salamander. Yeah, there are organisms that don't age. They're essentially immortal. They're still around.
I read that they found a shark that was 500 years old.
Yeah. Yep.
And we're not even looking for them. And you mentioned in another broadcast an African mole or something, some kind of mole.
Well, there is a naked mole rat, which is basically it lives in us underground, and they live in these hypoxic conditions without oxygen, and they appear not to age, and they never get cancer. They live 10 times longer than mice. They're not immortal. They can die, but they don't get cancer or other diseases. So yeah, so we have examples That doesn't mean we humans can do it, but I think, we are beyond evolution here, right?
It's, I mean, we're taking our own evolution in hand.
Yeah,
We're controlling it. But it does answer the fact that there are organisms that do not age, does answer the metaphysical objection that this is inevitable, it can't be done. There's just like a law of nature that things wear out. So some don't.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have to figure out how they do it.
Yeah, and the argument that I give, because I'm very much on that side, is that the genetic code and the basic sexual reproduction mechanism is not different in, probably even multicellular organisms than man. It's not that I understand that a particular drug that works in mice might not work in man, but if you're talking about the DNA and aging and the basic mechanics of life, it's not different in man and in the animal. So it's just the details that are going to be different here.
Well, the good news is we're learning a lot about it, and we can now decode the human genome, and we have measurements like multi-omics. You have metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, and if we can make them much faster and cheaper than we used to be able to do that. So genomics, to decode full human genome cost $100 million in 2021. It's under $1,000 today. This is faster than Moore's law, right?
So
and now
from
we have
$100 million to $1,000. How about the time it takes to do the analysis?
That also, it happens fast. They have these microarrays, Infinium arrays that
So when you say faster, I'm trying to bring you out to make them. It's maybe 1,000 times faster.
So it probably, yes. What I'm looking to invest in, if a company comes to me and they can do it at home, I want to have a daily kind of, you and I talked about the need for time resolution, because all of these things fluctuate in our bodies. And, I want to be able to do it, if you, let's say, do some treatment that your body may respond different from my body, from naked mole rod's body, right, to some treatment. And if you don't know what's going on, you don't know the dosage and the whole value is in the right dosage. So anyway, so these measurements are very, very important, and we need to be able to do them with much higher time resolution and much, much cheaper and faster in home. And actually my team is looking at some of that as we speak.
Nike?
My team, the team here at quadraScope.
I don't know that, but
well, we're looking at what exists, and there are some very exciting technologies coming online to really help us understand what's going on and how to treat them.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really helping us also is artificial intelligence and machine learning, because now we can measure and we have a torrent of data to analyze. Human beings are unable to analyze it. And the goal is to have the AI be our doctor. You want the computer to take all these metrics that will be available and become the doctor and define what is your specific body with your specific genetics and metabolomics and all that stuff, and your history of disease and your environment. What do you specifically need, either to cure disease or to rejuvenate? And that's going to be very important. That whole feedback loop is going to be key for effectiveness.
Yeah, I think you're saying what I read in David Sinclair's book, that aging is not treated as a disease, but it really is a kind of behind all the diseases that we tend to get. There's so many diseases that a 25-year-old won't get, but an 80-year-old is probably already dealing with, because it is a kind of umbrella condition that contains a lot of disease. Well, that was your first
Yeah,
chart. Was that?
so this one chart tells it all, right? It's a little bit overused, but it's an amazing chart. I mean, these are diseases, and as we age, it doesn't matter what disease, it depends on your genetics, which one you get, but as you age, your probability of dying from any one of these diseases is going up exponentially, right? And so the idea
why doesn't the FDA recognize aging as something that should be given the same treatment as a specific, same money and treatment by the government as a specific disease is?
Well, there are people trying to convince it that they should. And I think the FDA is there at some of our rejuvenation conferences. They're aware of what's going on.
Oh, yeah?
There's a study that's been approved by the FDA by Nir Barzilai, who's a prominent scientist, one of the founding fathers of rejuvenation, actually. And he claims that metformin, a diabetic drug that reduces sugar in your blood, will extend life. And so he and a group of scientists convinced the FDA to run a study, to approve a study of metformin, and they will measure, among other things, time to any disease, not one disease. So today, the way the FDA works is you need to give them a disease, and you need to tell them your treatment has to be both safe and efficacious and better than what exists today, right? So this study will not have any one disease. So they say, we're going to measure time to whatever disease happens first. So
that's good. Now, metformin, is that the precursor of NAD plus, or is NAD plus the precursor of metformin? I forget which.
So NAD plus is basically an energy molecule. It's like energy currency in our body. That's produced by mitochondria. And metformin basically fights sugar in the blood, and it has many rejuvenating effects. It's a different.
It's different. It's not a precursor, because somebody told me you shouldn't take one that's the direct chemical because it's too strong. You should take this other thing that's a precursor of that chemical.
Yeah, there's NMN and NR.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah,
yes,
nicotinamide riboside, and and so both of them work. We know a lot more about NR. We have a lot more data on NR than NMN. David Sinclair has NMN he's been taking, but he has other companies now starting under Eden Rock umbrella. He has multiple companies producing some super effective NAD precursor. That's a combination of molecules. Yeah.
So it's probably you don't want to take NAD directly because it's a little uncontrolled.
It's a large molecule. Okay. And it doesn't stick around. I mean, some people do, I think, infusions, and then there are some studies shows it goes right out in your urine and doesn't stick around. It doesn't get absorbed. So yeah, I mean, this whole absorption, what are all these things do? It comes back to, we need to measure this stuff inside your body quickly. We need to figure out whether it's doing anything or not, because we can spend a lot of time on stuff that's not doing anything for us, right?
Okay, we have not that much time left. Wow. Let's get specific and tell us about the companies that you're invested in and the therapeutic or preventive things that you do, whether or not you don't have to recommend them, just put it under the rubric, well, I do this. You do it at your own risk if you want to.
So, okay, so let's start with the companies. I'm going to maybe flip to this slide because some of the logos are here. But of course, our fund has more structured way of presenting it, but this is an interesting chart that starts at the turn of the century and shows all the Nobel Prizes. And again, our scientific director, Dr. Navarro, put it together. And why Nobel Prizes? That's because they represent true breakthroughs. And he selected Nobel Prizes that relate to longevity. So we talked about senescent cells. They typically run out of telomeres, or they have some DNA damage and become senescent. You earlier brought up this example of Moderna, who's trained their mRNA vaccine, specifically analyzed the genomic consistency of melanoma, of specific cancer, and created a vaccine to kill it. But in order to find, so cancer cells are very tricky. They can hide, they can camouflage themselves with various molecules that the immune system looks for on the surface of the cancer cells to kill them. But these cancer cells float up these molecules and they hide under them. And so the immune system, natural killer cells, come and grab all these molecules in the bloodstream, in the microenvironment of the cancer. So actually, Moderna worked with Merck's Keytruda, which is en route to become the top drug this year. And Keytruda can unmask the cancer. It can deplete these particles, and then Moderna comes and finds it and kills it.
These particles that it cloaks with or whatever, are they on the surface of the cancer cells, or do they float in the?
They're both. You want them to be on the surface so that the immune system can recognize the cells and come kill them, but they float them up off the surface and cover themselves. So the immune system comes in, and they're basically decoys floating above this cancer. And so, our investment, Nanotics, is a little nano device. It's a nanoparticle called Nanot. It's 120 nanometers in diameter, and it will only pick up the floating particles and not touch the cell surface. It's designed to be better than Keytruda. And so it clears the cancer. So right now, Nanotics is going into clinical studies with the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and Mass General. Two of the studies are for cancer, and one study is for sepsis. For sepsis, there is nothing today. Yet even young people can die of it because immune system runs amok. And nanots can be injected and remove all the inflammatory cytokines that are floating in the blood and causing cancer or whatever, or inflammation for aging, for that matter. And they can deplete their target within 5 minutes of injection. Okay.
So a nanoparticle, for those who don't know in the audience, and nano is a prefix like micro, and it means 10 to the minus
9. 10 to the minus.
So a billionth of a centimeter, or is it of a meter? It doesn't really matter. It's super tiny.
Yeah, it's the size of immune system cytokines. It's about that size.
Okay, so it's the size of these
molecules. Agents on them so they can mate with them, and it can be designed for different targets, and it can be designed for various inflammatory proteins in your bloodstream. So earlier you brought up, for example, plasmapheresis, right? And some of the methods, there's a clinic in Germany that when it does it, it filters out some of these particles that camouflage cancer, and they actually have been very effective in treating cancer that way. And nanots can just go in and kill whatever it is you want. They can go and clear your blood without any injecting or drawing blood or anything like that.
So
and they can be designed to clear anything.
Plasmapheresis is the practice of taking some blood plasma, the fluid, out, because it also takes out some of the toxins, for want of a better word, and your body will make fresh plasma, or they filter it and put your plasma back in if they take a large quantity. And that has dramatic effects, improving the person's health. But the nanotics, you said, you don't have to take the blood out. You just send these little particles in and it cleans it up. Is that approximately right?
That's correct. Yep.
So that'd
Just
be
cleans it
a
up.
big help. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a modern drug. It actually uses semiconductor substrates, and it uses click chemistry, which also got a Nobel Prize just last year. So we are, this whole field is accelerating, and the acceleration is actually driven by high tech and deep tech marrying with biotech. And it's really exciting stuff that's happening. So some of our other companies, we have Repair Bio, which actually has genetically engineered macrophages. Macrophages are white blood cells. Their job, one of their jobs, is to go into your arteries and clear cholesterol. But when you have oxidized cholesterol, and we all do, 44% of us are going to die of atherosclerosis, of this cholesterol building up. And these macrophages go in and they try to clean it. It's their job. But they get poisoned by oxidized cholesterol and then get stuck, and they become part of that plaque. And they become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And so Repair Bio has genetically engineered and added an enzyme to these macrophages to enable them not to get poisoned and
Is that
to
on
clear.
your chart, Repair?
It's not here. You know what? I didn't bring my fun slides because this is an educational show. But anybody who's interested is welcome to contact us. And, I'll be happy to review.
How would they do that? What is it? quadraScope.com?
Yeah, quadraScope.com or my email fm@quadraScope.com.
FM at quadraScope.
Yeah.
So quadra like quadratic or fourfold, and scope like scope.com.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but this is industry as a whole, but there's some exciting things going on. And then we also should mention extracellular matrix. So collagen and elastin, and it's visible in our faces as we age, we get wrinkles and sagginess, but it's not just cosmetic. It's happening in our bodies, and it stiffens our arteries and it damages our organs. And so we have just invested into this Israeli company called BioChange that has new live biomaterial to basically regrow your collagen and elastin, and cells actually live on that extracellular matrix, and they repair it and they maintain it. And the cells love that particular substance, and they go and live on it, and becomes live regenerative filler. And there are companies that are also working on, and your blood vessels, we just talked about clearing them with Repair Bio, but they also lose their elasticity and become stiff. And so you need to restore that elastin, and it gets gunked up by AGEs, advanced glycation molecules, the sugars. And so, so there's a lot of...
They can give you an injection or something to make you produce new fresh collagen to replace
it's actually,
the old?
The first application is for filling, the receding gums and face. And yes, they inject just like a filler, but it becomes a live regenerative, live soft tissue. It's not just a filler. And so that's exciting because that's a huge market. And even though there's been a drop-off in investment into startups, that market has not slowed down at all. There's a lot of innovation.
Yeah, I was just hearing today that there's less money for startups recently. On CNBC, they mentioned that. But not in your field.
Not in the cosmetic field. Let's put it this way. So, but anything that happens to cosmetic happens inside. That's important to remember, right? So we need to have these treatments that maybe they first start with this hot market, then make some money and return it to the fund and into their own coffers, and then continue working on more substantive fixes for us.
And what could you recommend for people to read and therapies for them to do?
Well, obviously, you mentioned David Sinclair's book, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. That's a must. I would say I would read Sandra Kaufman's The Kaufman Protocol. She is head of, she's some kind of a head in a Southern California hospital, but she took some time, and she wants to stay young because she's an athlete. She's a big athlete, and she, for herself, looked at a lot of the papers and processed them, and she came up with a list of supplements and adjuvants and characterized what they do. And she has a good guide on which ones to take and why.
How do you spell Kaufman?
Kaufman. It could be 2 F's, and I'll be happy to provide that link.
Okay.
It's a Kaufman protocol on
Googling approximately will certainly find it. Sandra Kaufman protocol. That will certainly get it. I'm going to do it right after the show. So, and what can people do? I mean, what do you recommend any, or do you yourself take? Let's not say recommend, that leads to lawsuits. Let's just say you take. What do you do that you think is good?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, exercise. So far, it is actually the most potent, anti-aging treatment.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
And then but as you age, it gets more difficult. So the hyperbaric oxygen treatments have been helping me stay on top, and they help your muscle repair and muscle building. And they oxygenate your blood and produce new vasculature and reach, the hypoxic tissue that starves of oxygen. It's been tremendous for me. It's not equipment, it's something we need to bring into the homes as well. So that's part of what my fund needs to do.
For those who don't know, let me explain that. It's a chamber that they originally used to treat divers who had the bends, which means too much nitrogen in their bloodstream, that from the pressure down, forcing nitrogen in when they were down. But then they noticed that it helps with wound healing, and it's been used for, 50 years. It's an old technology, but it's a tank you get in and they pressurize it, and then they give you some pure oxygen. You sit in there and maybe an hour, hour and a half, and then you go home. That's what it is. Hyperbaric oxygen. Right.
So that, and then I do follow the Kaufman protocol. I actually read through the book, took very careful notes, and got supplements. And I did start noticing the difference. Let's see what else. Yeah. So sauna.
Sauna.
Yeah, sauna. And I designed my own sauna based on sauna space components. So. Yeah, so, and just sleep, and metformin to keep my sugar low, and
so you do take metformin?
Yeah, metformin, and it's just and Sandra recommends it too. But what's important is to figure out the dosages, because some of these things we don't know what the dosages need to be. And that's where people just go take stuff, and they may be wasting their time if they don't take enough or take too much.
Yeah, you mentioned in another place that some of these things are U charts. So there's
sweet
spot where this is optimal to take, but you take less and you have less effect, or more.
Yeah, and you just don't have. Sometimes you don't have. Sometimes you can harm yourself, right? And you can also harm yourself with too much.
Yeah. Okay.
And the doctors don't know anything. Of course, average doctors don't know, but even specialized doctors, right? You have to become your own doctor. And I went to a doctor, I'm not going to name, to take this rapamycin that everybody, and I decided I don't go to doctors. I figured out how to read my blood work and how to compute my own dosages. So I tried it on my own. I computed the dosage of rapamycin. I took it and I went to measure it, and it was way below what it's supposed to be. I doubled the dosage. I measured again, still at the same level. So I'm saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I better go see a doctor. So I went to this doctor. He gave me the exact same dosage that I computed and didn't bother measuring anything. And then I said, but I showed him my blood work. I said, what do we do? And then he did help me, but I had to draw him out. He helped me figure out when to measure it because I was a slow metabolizer and we had to catch it at the peak. And they ended up, when I finally figured out how to measure it correctly, needing twice the dosage that I computed. So there you go. So, and I could have been wasting my money and time and not getting any effect at all, right? So that's what makes it tricky. It's not just popping a bunch of pills. It's figuring out what to do in an age where we still don't know this stuff, right?
There's a question, one question that I would like you to answer, and then we'll be finished. What does Ms. Miller think about companies like Organovo, who are trying to perfect 3D bioprinting of organs, and how does it relate to life extension?
Yeah, Organovo. So there are several companies in that space. I hope that they achieve what they want, because we don't have organ replacement, and this is part of the repair process, right? They haven't succeeded. None of them have succeeded for one reason or another. We did look at an investment in that space. We're still looking at it. Certainly, it's exciting.
A follow-up. Doris Taylor on pigs and rats and the possibility of growing human hearts, question mark?
Yeah, so pigs are a good, that's kind of the next answer to artificial organ growing, like from 3D printing, is why not just grow them in pigs, right?
Or why not grow them in
stem cells, exactly. So liver is regenerative, so you can regenerate from stem cells. So yes, so stem cells, I would prefer that method. But they're all up and coming, and we're looking at some of these companies.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to push so quickly through things that really need to be discussed with a little more leisure, but it was very interesting, and you answered a lot of my questions, and I'm sure the viewers' questions. So thank you very much for the interview.
Sorry to cut you off. Can we just get one more question in?
One more? Is there another one?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. Brian Johnson's blueprint experiment. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I certainly do. You know, Brian's had a lot of publicity. I think he's doing some interesting things. What I like he's doing, he's trying to measure everything, and he's very much into measuring. However, none of these metrics are accepted or known, and he hasn't published any of them. So he's saying he takes 100 supplements. He has this very rigorous regimen and diet. But I haven't seen any measurements that I understand that or he hasn't published them. And by the way, none of these, he says he can measure age of different organs like liver and skin and whatnot. I don't know how these are measured, and the industry doesn't know how they're measured. So I'd be curious. I certainly commend him for doing it. I'd love to learn more.
Okay. Thanks for the questions, audience, and thanks for the great eye-opening talk, and to the audience. I'll see you next week on HBTV.
Thank you for having me, Harry.